Welcome to Lead. This is our season 4, and I'm excited about what we're going to be jumping into because I believe it's going to be so important in your leadership development. Now you know, all of us, if you're a Christ follower, well, you're a leader. I love it when Moses is in front of the burning bush, and God is calling him to lead, and Moses starts to give excuses. Moses is like, but I've got this inadequacy, but I've got this insecurity. And God is really not interested in those. He's interested in Moses developing into the leader that he desires for him to be. And God is calling you to leadership. Whatever that looks like in your sphere of influence, He's calling you to lead. And quite honestly, we can offer a lot of excuses because we all have insecurities, we all have inadequacies, we all have places that we see our flaws and the places maybe that we don't feel like we measure up. And yet God is calling us to lead. Jesus said it like this, that we're the salt and the light. And so this world needs to see leadership. And He says this, don't hide your light. Don't hide it under a bushel. Don't remove it and try to keep it from being seen. No, shine brightly. And so we're going to be dealing with this idea of leadership in this aspect. I love what Leonard Ravenhill said years ago. He told this story about a group of tourists that were visiting a very picturesque village in Europe. And as they walked by this old man that was sitting outside by a fence, one person thought they would ask a kind of a patronizing question and said, were there any great men born in this village? And he said, nope, only babies were born here. And I would just tell you this, that when it comes to leadership, well, it's all about developing, right? We have this term called a born leader. Well, yeah, there's maybe something we could say about that. Not today, not in this episode. But I do know this, that's born leaders rise to the surface, they emerge, but they don't stay there. A natural leader doesn't stay there without development. You may feel like you're not a born leader, you're not a natural leader, or any of those things. Just know this, that all of us have to develop in our leadership, and it doesn't come with DNA. It comes through development. I think that a lot of development has to do with growing, and here's the word for this season: maturity. Maturity. Just say it where you're at, maturity. I would say turn to your neighbor and say it, but you may be all alone. So maturing. Leadership, if you take notes on these at all, you could write this down. Leadership gets better with maturity. Leadership gets better with maturity. You may say, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? You may be saying, do you have to be old to be a good leader? No, not at all. Not at all. I'm just saying this, that as a leader, and when it comes to your leadership, a lot of stuff, when it comes to leadership, gets better as you grow, as you spend time. The way that you view yourself becomes more accurate the longer that you develop as a leader. The lens in which you see others becomes more clear the more you develop your leadership. The discernment concerning situations and people, well, it becomes more clear and more focused and more effective as you develop as a leader. The interactions that you have with people become more measured when you grow as a leader. The purpose of your life becomes more focused and more on point as you develop as a leader. And no doubt your personal discipline grows as you grow and develop in leadership. No doubt the amount of grace that you extend to others in your life, well, that grows as well. I love what it says in Mark 10, verses 42 through 45, and I'm reading from the NRSV. It says, so Jesus called them and said to them, you know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers, their leaders, they lord it over them. And the great ones are tyrants over them. It's not a good picture. In other words, this picture is Jesus is saying, well, there's a form of leadership that is present in our world that is tyrannical. It's it's a dictatorial kind of leadership. It's one in which people, they lord over other people. He says in verse 43, but it is not so among you. Whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man, Jesus himself, came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. In other words, Jesus is saying there is a leadership, there is a way to lead that is serving. And you'll hear me say this over and over if you've listened to any of the lead podcast, well, you've seen, or the episodes you've seen, that leadership and servanthood, well, they go hand in hand. A good leader is a good servant. And if you serve well, you're leading. And so, I think about, when you think about this idea of being a tyrant leader and being a servant leader, you could watch someone leading worship. Well, leading worship, the worship leader that tries to drive people, that didn't always go so well. There's a big difference in drawing people to a place that you've been, saying, come along, let's go to where I've already been, rather than pushing people to a place that you haven't got to yet. And I think that the mature leader understands that I want to serve people by helping them to go the way I know, where I've been, the place that I've been in worship, the place that I'm familiar with, not trying to push them in a place that I think, well, this would be a good idea. Serving them is going there first. And serving there is saying, come, let's go together. Let's go together. I love it what Herman Hesse said. He said, youth ends when egotism does. Maturity begins when one lives for others. And that's mature leadership. Mature leadership is that I've taken the focus off of me and I've put it on others. I'm putting others in a place of perspective where I'm serving them. Immature leadership is a leadership that takes. Immature leadership is a leadership that forces. Immature leadership is a leadership that coerces. That's not mature leadership that does that. That's fleshly, carnal leadership. It's the picture of an immature leader. Here's where the experience becomes, and I like this old adage, this is where maturity comes, is understanding that it's immature thinking that I'm just going to lead the horse to the water. You know the old adage. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. It's immature to think that I'm going to push someone to a place and I'm going to force them to go to a place instead of drawing them along. Mature leadership, that life becomes focused on serving people, helping people to experience the water of life. So I don't just want to get them there, but I want them to drink. I want them to experience life. Maturity is taking responsibility. These are just some ways that I've listed out, and I think it's going to help you. And if you apply these, I believe that they can be life-changing to your life in general and to your leadership. Maturity is taking responsibility for you. Maturity is taking responsibility for your growth and your personal development. It's the idea that you own it, that you own the idea that I need to grow and I'm going to own the responsibility for it. Now, that doesn't start that way, but it's a developmental process. Maturity is looking beyond today, looking beyond your current status, having a plan that's far beyond this. Maturity is planning for the future. Where do I want my life to go? Where do I want my leadership to go? And so I'm going to plan for that. And that starts today. Don't think it's a good idea and then, well, I'll do this someday. It starts today. List out what's your future going to look like. Do you want to write a book? Do you want to lead a small group? Do you want to start a business? Do you want to develop and get a promotion where you work? Do you want to be a leader in your community? Do you want to be a leader in the church? Do you want to serve well? Make it a point to define what that is and plan for your future. So what are the steps I need to take? Maturity is making the right investments so that you can experience the right kind of growth and dividends in your life. Right decisions, making the right investments, will produce the right kind of dividends, the dividends that you want to see in your life. Maturity is that you have decided and that you are doing what is best for your personal growth and development. Maturity is refusing to remain static. Don't look back at the last 10 years and realize that you're at the same place you've been and then do that again and repeat that. Don't repeat the same thing. Make a decision today that I'm going to make the steps, not just a good idea, I'm going to take the steps so that I can see my life removed from this static place to a place of growth, development, and maturity. And I'm telling you this, it will change your life and it will change your leadership.